Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala, course Legal Literacy, Module 4, topic Constitution. In Module 4, we are going to look at a few other fundamental rights which fall under the category of right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, and cultural and educational rights. Article 23 falls under the category of right against exploitation. Its title is Prohibition of Traffic in Human Beings and Forced Labor. Clause 1 of Article 23 talks about human beings. Hence, this article is applicable to men, women, and children. It prohibits traffic, begar, and other similar forms of forced labor. Such activities are to be made punishable by the law. Now, in the next slide, let us try and understand these different terms. Trafficking. The word trafficking has not been described in the Constitution. The Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956 has the word trafficking in its title, but it's not defined nor mentioned in the body. So what do we understand by trafficking? One of the essentials of trafficking is movement, shifting a person from one place to another. It may be from one country to another, from one state to another, from one city to another, or from one part of the city to another part of the city. The characteristics of trafficking are: 1, it is an organized crime. Other examples of organized crime are drug smuggling and arms dealing. Organized crime has several persons who are involved in it. The next characteristic is monetary flourishing. The trafficker makes a lot of money in this activity, hence he's not very willing to give it up easily. It occurs for several purposes. Trafficking takes place for labor, for commercial sexual exploitation, for marriage, for organ trade, and for many other reasons. The end of trafficking is the exploitation of the victim. That is the reason and purpose of trafficking. The protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, supplementing the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime, is in short called the Palermo Protocol. The Palermo Protocol defines the term trafficking of persons. India has ratified this protocol in 2011. On the international platform, the definition of trafficking in persons contained in this protocol has been used as a working definition. Section 370 IPC has been substituted by the Criminal Amendment Act 2013. Earlier, Section 370 dealt with slavery. Now it deals with trafficking in persons. Subsection 1 of Section 370 defines trafficking of persons. Recognizing that trafficking is an organized offense and has several links, it treats the recruiter, the transporter, the harborer, the transferor, and the receiver as an offender. It also stipulates the different manner in which the trafficker gains possession of the victim: by using threats, using force, or any other form of coercion, etc. Article 23 requires to be abided by state agencies as well as private parties. This has been reflected in the Supreme Court judgment of 1982, People's Union for Democratic Rights. This judgment is with regards to violation of labor laws in the construction sector. Here, people were being employed for carrying out construction activity in Delhi for the Asian Games. I would like to repeat that the end purpose of trafficking is exploitation. Exploitation may be of any kind: physical, sexual, monetary. Another important thing is that the consent of the victim is immaterial. It would amount to an offense whether the victim consented or not. I would also like to mention that trafficking is penalized under Section 370 of the Indian Penal Code. Now, let us understand the term begar. Begar means taking labor from a person without paying him remuneration. In the PUDR judgment, which we had earlier seen, also defines and describes what is begar. Please read this carefully. It is very difficult to formulate a precise definition of the word begar, but there can be no doubt that it is a form of forced labor under which a person is compelled to work without receiving any remuneration. So begar is a form of forced labor. The Vasudevan judgment is another judgment which deals with begar and other similar forms of forced labor. It continues to say that this article strikes at forced labor in whatever form it may manifest itself. It also says that forms of forced labor are violative of human dignity and is contrary to basic human values. Now we are going to another category of fundamental rights, which is right to freedom of religion. You will at this stage recall that secular has been contained in the preamble of the Constitution. Article 25 is titled Freedom of Conscience and Free Profession, Practice and Propagation of Religion. Clause 1 of Article 25. Subject to public order, morality and health, and to the other provisions of this part, all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right freely to profess, practice, and propagate religion. The important words in this clause are all persons are equally entitled, which means that you are entitled to freedom of religion, as am I. In the next slide, we will be looking at the different terms contained under Clause 1. The first right is right to freedom of conscience. Freedom of conscience is extremely important as it allows an individual to choose the religion which his conscience freely accepts. It also allows an individual to proclaim that he does not follow any religion, as the tenets of all religions are distasteful to him. The Bombay High Court in 2014 stated that the right to freedom of conscience includes within it the right for a person to proclaim that he is an atheist. It allows a person not to specify his religion for any official purpose. Right to profess a religion. What does that mean? Professing a religion means it allows the person to publicly proclaim that he belongs to a particular religion. In several countries, such proclamation is discouraged. Practicing religion means carrying on the practices and rituals of that religion which are essential or the core of a religion. A person also has the right to propagate his religion. Propagating religion means communicating your religious beliefs to another. It does not mean forcefully converting another person to your own religion. Conversion is also a right under a freedom of religion. It allows a person to convert from his religion to that of another, but such person or the state cannot forcefully convert another person to his religion. Right to freedom of religion is not absolute. It is subject to public order, morality and health, and other fundamental rights. Religion's practice has to be in conformity with fundamental rights. Religious practices cannot be against public order, morality, or health. A religious practice cannot continue which is exploitative or oppressive. Article 28 is titled Freedom as to Attendance at Religious Instruction or Religious Worship in Certain Educational Institutions. Article 28 deals with regular educational institutions. Clause 1 of this article states that no religious instruction shall be provided in any educational institution wholly maintained out of state funds. This is in accordance with the secular nature of the state. The state cannot reflect that it prefers a particular religion. Clause 3 of Article 28. Please read it closely. No student should participate in religious instruction without his or her consent or without their family's consent. Now we are going to the next group, which is cultural and educational rights. Article 29 is titled Protection of Interests of Minorities. It obligates the state to take action to conserve different languages, scripts, and culture. It is the right, a fundamental right of an individual to ensure that his language, script, or culture is protected. Clause 2 of Article 29 also deals with regular educational institutions. It prohibits discrimination at the time of admission. It prohibits discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, language, or any of them. Article 30 is extremely important. It deals with minority educational institutions, whereas Article 28 and 29 dealt with regular educational institutions. Article 30 is titled Right of Minorities to Establish and Administer Educational Institutions. Please read Clause 1 closely. All minorities, whether based on religion or language, shall have the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. It deals with two types of minorities. One, a religious minority. Two, a language minority. It also mentions that these minorities may administer and establish educational institutions of their choice. What do we mean by the term of their choice? Of their choice means that they could treat a particular language as the medium of instruction. The meaning of the term minority is explained by the Kerala High Court in this 1965 judgment, Aldo Maria Patroni, and this judgment has been adopted by the Supreme Court in the TMA Pai Foundation case. The word minority is not defined in the Constitution, and in the absence of any special definition, we must hold that any community, religious or linguistic, which is numerically less than 50% of the population of the state, is entitled to the fundamental right guaranteed by this article. What does this judgment say? 1. It shows that the term minority is not a nationwide concept. It is a state-wise concept. Next, it says that a minority religion or a minority language is that which is used by less than 50% of that state's population. Section 370 of the Indian Penal Code defines the term trafficking of persons. Section 370 was substituted in the Indian Penal Code by the Criminal Amendment Act 2013. Earlier, Section 370 dealt with slavery. The definition of trafficking of persons contained in Section 370 of the IPC is based on the definition trafficking in person contained in the Palermo Protocol. Section 370 recognizes that trafficking is an organized crime and there are several links. Hence, it treats as an offender all those persons involved in that link, which includes the recruiter, that is, the person who obtains possession of the trafficked person, the transporter, the harborer, the transferor, or the receiver. All these 5 play an extremely important link in the process of trafficking. The definition also shows the manner in which a victim is taken possession of by the trafficker. It could be by using threats or by using force or any other form of coercion, or by abduction, or by practicing fraud or deception, or by abuse of power, or by inducement, including the giving or receiving of payments or benefits in order to achieve the consent of any person having control over the person recruited, transported, harbored, transferred, or received commits the offense of trafficking. I would like to reiterate that the purpose of trafficking is for the exploitation of another. It includes any sort of exploitation, physical, sexual, or monetary. The word include in explanation 1 denotes that it is not restricted to those activities mentioned therein. Explanation 2 states that the trafficking in person is committed even when the victim consents. Consent of the victim is immaterial in the offense of trafficking. Section 370 also penalizes and states the punishment for trafficking. The punishment differs depending upon the age of the victim or the number of persons trafficked. The right to freedom of religion is not an absolute right. It is subject to public order, morality, and health, and to the other provisions of this part. This means that The right to freedom of religion cannot be enjoyed in a manner whereby it breaches public order, morality, health, or any other fundamental rights contained in the Constitution. Exploitative or oppressive practices cannot be carried out in the name of religion. For example, a religious practice is prohibited which deliberately outrages the religious feelings of others because that could cause a public order situation, or a practice which is against morality like human sacrifices is prohibited. Also prohibited is causing a nuisance in the name of religion as well as violation of other fundamental rights. In this module, we have discussed certain fundamental rights. Article 23 is extremely important as it prohibits certain activities such as trafficking in persons, begar, and other forms of forced labor. The important thing is that it is not only the state agency but also private parties who are to desist from such activities. Right to freedom of religion was also discussed. Freedom of religion has a prime place in our fundamental rights. Therefore, it is also reflected in our preamble by the use of the word secular. Educational institutions should also be very careful that they do not discriminate on the ground of religion, race, etc. This is important in regular educational institutions, but in our constitutions, minorities have been given a specific status. Minorities are allowed to run their educational institutions according to their choice. It is also a state's obligation to conserve language, script, and culture, especially that belonging to the minorities. We have also seen that the term minority is a state-related term. Thank you. But before I end, I would like you to read Short Constitution of India by D.D. Basu. This book very simply deals with the different provisions of the Constitution. Of course, for further understanding, you may also look at the text which is uploaded along with this module.